Lately, a question has been surfacing with increasing intensity. Do the chosen ones really exist? All it takes is to open any social media platform to be flooded with messages telling you that you are special, set apart, sent on a higher mission. At first, that may sound comforting, but after a while, something starts to feel off. If everyone is chosen, then what does it actually mean? I began to look at this kind of content more critically, not out of spiritual disbelief, but precisely out of respect for spirituality. What exactly would make someone a chosen one? Sensitivity, pain, intuition, or are we simply feeding a narrative that pleases the ego and gives meaning to suffering? Questioning this isn't a lack of faith, it's lucidity. At the same time, there's another extreme that's concerning. A part of the spiritual community seems to have slipped into a kind of collective psychosis. Conspiracy theories, invisible enemies, constant persecution narratives. Even those who have gone through the dark night of the soul may feel disheartened to see spirituality mixed with fear, paranoia, and fantasies that bring no real growth. This creates confusion. It makes you want to pull away from everything. Delete social media. Mute the noise. Because knowledge that doesn't make you more conscious, more responsible, and more present doesn't set you free. It only adds more noise. And spirituality should not disconnect you from reality. It should help you live in it with more truth. My name is George, and if you've made it this far, I invite you to take this reflection seriously. This channel does not exist to inflate egos or sell spiritual illusions, but to speak honestly about awakening, pain, lucidity, and responsibility. If this question also lives within you, follow the channel. Here, spirituality is treated with depth, discernment, and a grounded perspective. When everyone is chosen, doubt stops being weakness and becomes lucidity. At some point, almost everyone who consumes spiritual content comes across the same strange feeling. It seems like the algorithm has decided to affirm every single day that you are a chosen one. Repeated messages, similar videos, nearly identical phrases saying that you are special, set apart, destined for something greater. At first, this can feel comforting, but then it starts to get confusing, and eventually, the inevitable question arises. What would really make me chosen? This doubt doesn't come from empty skepticism, but from awareness. Thinking critically about spirituality is not a sign of detachment. It's a sign of maturity. When an idea starts being repeated excessively, without depth or discernment, it loses strength. And when everyone is considered chosen just for watching a video or relating to a quote, the concept loses any real meaning. There is a major risk when spirituality becomes mere emotional identification. The person identifies with pain, with a sense of not belonging, with the difficulty of fitting in. And then they receive a label that explains it all. You are chosen. That may bring temporary relief, but it can also prevent real growth. Because when everything is explained by something external, nothing needs to be worked on internally. Questioning this narrative is not denying spirituality, it's protecting it. It's refusing to turn something deep into a shallow product. True spirituality doesn't need to persuade or seduce the masses. It transforms from the inside out. When spiritual content becomes empty repetition, it serves engagement more than it serves awareness. Another important point is the psychological impact of all this. People going through vulnerable moments, after deep crises or dark nights of the soul, become more susceptible to any narrative that gives meaning to inner chaos. Saying, "You are chosen," can sound like a ready-made answer to complex pain. But not all pain is a sign of a spiritual mission. Sometimes, it's just pain that needs to be cared for. In this context, doubt is healthy. It separates those seeking truth from those seeking belonging. Because accepting everything without questioning is just as dangerous as rejecting everything. The balance lies in discernment, and discernment is one of the marks of mature spirituality. When you start wondering if you're losing it, or if the environment is just exaggerating, you're probably exercising something rare these days: independent thinking. And that doesn't distance you from spirituality. It brings you closer to a cleaner version of it, less contaminated by trends, shallow theories, and inflated rhetoric. Maybe the true sign of awareness is not feeling chosen, but refusing to accept any label that doesn't come with responsibility, depth, and real transformation. Spirituality, social media, and the thin line between awakening and disorientation. There is a point where spirituality, when poorly handled, stops liberating and starts confusing, and social media amplifies this in an intense way. What used to be an intimate, quiet, and gradual path often becomes a spectacle, an exaggerated narrative, and even collective paranoia. It's not uncommon to see spiritual content mixed with conspiracy theories, hidden enemies, constant persecution narratives, and fantastical explanations for everything. For those who've been through the dark night of the soul, this can be especially dangerous, because after an internal collapse, the mind urgently seeks meaning, and not all meaning is healthy. There is a huge difference between spiritual awakening and spiritual disorientation. Awakening brings more clarity, more responsibility, and more presence. Disorientation brings fear, a constant sense of being attacked, the need to feel special, and a rigid division between us and them. When spirituality starts generating more paranoia than peace, something is off track. Another problem is when knowledge doesn't translate into real-life practice. Theories that don't improve your relationships, don't increase your emotional awareness, and don't help you better navigate the real world aren't liberating. They're just sophisticated distractions. Knowing a lot but integrating little transforms no one. Many people feel like withdrawing completely from spirituality because of all this. Deleting social media, going silent, disconnecting. Not because they stopped believing, but because they got tired of the exaggeration, the superficiality, and the confusion. That's not spiritual regression. It may be self-protection. Real spirituality doesn't take your feet off the ground. It plants them more firmly. It doesn't isolate you from people, but teaches you to relate better, with boundaries and awareness. It doesn't create imaginary enemies, but helps you face your own shadows. It's important to say this clearly. Not all spiritual content is true, and not everyone who talks about light is aligned with it. There is a market, there is vanity, there is ego. Acknowledging this doesn't make you less spiritual. It makes you more responsible. Discernment is key. Questioning, filtering, and observing the real effects of a teaching in your life. If something leaves you more confused, more fearful, or more disconnected from reality, it may not be the right path. Mature spirituality doesn't promise easy salvation or a special identity. It offers inner work, silence, responsibility, and often conscious solitude. And that doesn't go viral, but it transforms. Being chosen is not a spiritual identity. It's a painful passage. There's a major misconception, especially on social media. The idea that being chosen is a comfortable spiritual identity, almost a title. In reality, being chosen is not something you claim. It's something that happens to you. It doesn't come as a privilege. It comes as a process, and almost always, a difficult one. The chosen don't awaken because they want to. They awaken because they can no longer ignore it. From an early age, there are signs of heightened sensitivity, sharp intuition, intense emotional perception. Often, Even as children, they already feel like they don't quite belong in the environment they're in. They don't fit in with the family, don't feel understood among friends, perceive the world differently, but don't know how to explain it. This doesn't bring admiration. It brings isolation. Being the black sheep isn't beautiful in practice. It's lonely. It's growing up feeling like something is wrong with you, when in fact, there's just a level of awareness that doesn't fit the norm. Many spend years trying to adapt, to shape themselves, to stay silent, just to fit in. That takes a heavy toll. Being chosen doesn't mean having ready-made answers. It means living with deep questions. It's not living in constant peace. It's learning to navigate repeated internal conflicts. It's not feeling special. It's feeling out of place. That's why when someone turns the term chosen into something glamorous, they completely ignore the real weight of this experience. Another important point, being chosen doesn't mean being spiritually above anyone, quite the opposite. It often means being forced to face your own shadows before most others. Pain comes early, breakdowns come early, losses come early, not as punishment, but as acceleration of the awakening process. That's why many chosen ones go through the dark night of the soul at stages in life when others are still distracted. This doesn't bring social advantage. It brings confusion, existential crises, and, often, deep loneliness. It's common to wish to be normal, to live like everyone else, to not feel so much, not perceive so much. When someone says, "If you don't believe in the chosen, you're not one of them," this shouldn't sound like arrogance, but like energetic acknowledgement. Those who haven't gone through the passage rarely understand it. And those who do rarely want the label, because they know the cost. The true chosen one doesn't want to be seen. They want to rest. They don't want to convince anyone. They want silence. They don't want followers. They want meaning. That's a fundamental difference between those who live the process and those who only consume the narrative. Spiritual loneliness is not superiority. It's energetic incompatibility. One of the hardest consequences of true awakening is loneliness. Not the romantic, introspective kind, but the practical, everyday kind. Difficulty in forming deep bonds, a constant sense of not belonging to groups, an inability to maintain superficial relationships for long. This doesn't stem from arrogance. It stems from incompatibility. When someone goes through a genuine awakening, they begin to clearly perceive emotional patterns, defense mechanisms, and ego games. This makes it nearly impossible to pretend everything is normal in environments where no one is looking within. Empty conversations become exhausting. Relationships built on masks are draining. Unconscious environments make one unwell. Because of this, many chosen ones spend long periods alone, even in their love life. Not due to a lack of desire to love, but due to a lack of real connection. It's difficult to relate deeply with someone who hasn't done any inner work, who projects everything onto the other and lives on autopilot. The difference in consciousness creates distance. This loneliness should not be confused with emotional detachment. The chosen one feels deeply, loves intensely, but cannot remain where they must shrink themselves to fit. This leads to constant breakups. Friendships end. Relationships don't progress. Bonds fall apart. In many cases, the chosen one also becomes a target of projection. People feel uncomfortable around them, without knowing why. Some attack, others pull away, some try to belittle. Not because the chosen one does anything wrong, but because their presence exposes what the other doesn't want to see in themselves. This creates the constant feeling of being attacked, rejected, or misunderstood. It's not a mystical persecution. It's a psychological and energetic dynamic. Light doesn't bother because it shines. It bothers because it reveals. It's important to say this loneliness is not a punishment, nor a spiritual trial. It is the result of a different level of consciousness, and it's not permanent. Over time, the chosen one finds a few, but true, kindred spirits. Rare, deep, and silent relationships. In the meantime, it's essential to learn to be with oneself without feeling broken. To learn that being alone does not mean being wrong. Often, it means being too whole to fit anywhere. Mature spirituality teaches this. Not every distancing is a loss. Sometimes, it's protection. And not every loneliness is absence. Sometimes it's preparation. False spiritualists, ego disguised as light, and the weariness of those who see. One of the most draining aspects for someone going through a real awakening is realizing how much spirituality has become a stage. Today, there's an overwhelming number of people talking about light, mission, chosen ones, and elevated consciousness. But very few actually living this in an integrated way. For those with spiritual sensitivity, this difference is felt in the body, not just understood by the mind. False spirituality is usually loud. It needs to assert itself, to convince, to promote. It uses pretty words, grand promises, and narratives that feed the ego. It often becomes business, status, or identity. It's not uncommon for it to come with constant requests for money, followers, or validation. This alone creates tremendous noise for anyone genuinely seeking truth. The true chosen one doesn't feel drawn to this spectacle. On the contrary, they feel exhausted by it. There's a deep fatigue in witnessing spiritual speeches that don't translate into ethics, emotional responsibility, or humility. Because spirituality that doesn't improve character isn't spirituality. It's fantasy. Another clear sign of distortion is when the message always frames others as the problem. Hidden enemies, unconscious people, external negative energies. This kind of narrative avoids the hardest work of all, looking inward. It feeds a sense of spiritual superiority and creates a rigid separation between us and them. This doesn't awaken. It isolates. True chosen ones recognize one another, not through words, but through posture, through how they deal with pain, with silence, with their own mistakes. There's no need for announcements. There is stillness, depth, a presence that needs no stage. That's why many chosen ones distance themselves from the spiritual community. Wishing to be normal isn't weakness, it's spiritual exhaustion. There's a thought that many chosen ones have but rarely admit out loud. The desire to be like everyone else, to not feel so much, to not perceive so much, to not carry so much. This thought doesn't come from envy. It comes from exhaustion. Being highly sensitive, intuitive, and aware from an early age is not easy. It means perceiving tension in the environment, unspoken emotions, hidden intentions. It means absorbing more than you should, feeling pain that isn't yours, and carrying deep questions while the world seems distracted by superficialities. Over time, this takes a toll. The chosen one goes through difficulties that seem never-ending. Family conflicts, rejection, loss, emotional attacks, subtle or explicit abuse. Not because they consciously attract these things, but because they don't fit into unconscious structures without creating friction. Building relationships becomes a constant challenge. It's not a lack of love. It's an excess of awareness. It's hard to connect deeply with people who don't take responsibility for themselves, who project everything onto others, or who live in emotional denial. The result is prolonged loneliness. Many chosen ones spend much of their life single, not by rational choice, but by energetic impossibility. Connections are rare. When they do happen, they're intense, but often unstable. This creates frustration and, at times, a sincere desire to be normal, to experience simple relationships without so much depth. This desire doesn't mean spiritual regression. It means humanity. The chosen one is not made of steel. They get tired, they suffer. They wonder why the path has to be so hard, and sometimes they truly wish they didn't know so much. But awareness doesn't go backward. Once you see, you can't unsee. Sensitivity doesn't switch off. What can change is how you treat yourself within this process. Being chosen isn't about feeling special. It's about sustaining consciousness. After passing through doubt, confusion, loneliness, exhaustion, and disillusionment with superficial spirituality, something begins to settle inside the true chosen one. A quiet understanding arises. Being chosen has nothing to do with being special in the eyes of the world. It has to do with sustaining a level of consciousness that few want or are able to maintain. The real chosen one doesn't constantly wonder if they are chosen. That question shows up more at the beginning of the path, when confusion, comparison, and the need for explanation still exist. Over time, the question changes. It's no longer, who am I? But, how do I live with what I am? And that shift is profound. Being chosen is not about holding on to a fixed spiritual identity. It's about living in constant internal adjustment. It's about recognizing patterns before they fully repeat. It's about sensing when something is misaligned, even without external proof. It's about choosing truth, even when it costs comfort, belonging, or approval. This level of awareness brings no social advantage. On the contrary, it often brings loss. Loss of illusions, of relationships that no longer hold, of environments that once felt safe. The chosen one learns that not everything familiar is healthy, and not everything that hurts is wrong. Discerning this takes emotional maturity. Over time, the chosen one also understands that they don't need to prove anything to anyone. They don't need to convince, explain, or save. Every person is on their own path of consciousness. Forcing awakening on someone who hasn't asked for it is not love. It's invasion. The true chosen one respects others' timing, even if that means walking alone for long stretches. Another important lesson is letting go of the inner war. Many chosen ones spend years fighting who they are, trying to fit in, numb themselves, or shrink. When that fight ends, something shifts. Life doesn't become easy, but it becomes more honest. And inner honesty brings peace, even in the midst of challenges. Being chosen also doesn't mean always being right or enlightened. It means being willing to look at yourself with brutal honesty, to recognize flaws, repetitive patterns, defense mechanisms. The ego doesn't disappear, but it stops running the show. Spirituality stops being a speech and becomes a daily practice. If you've made it this far, it's because this reflection touched something real within you, not because someone told you you're special, but because you recognized, on some level, the complexity of this path. The truth is that mature spirituality doesn't offer easy answers or ready-made identities. It offers awareness, and awareness requires responsibility. Being chosen, as we've seen, is not a title or a compliment from the universe. It's a silent crossing, often a lonely one, that begins early and comes at a high cost. There's no glamour in feeling too much, perceiving too much, or questioning too much. There is exhaustion, doubt, and often a sincere longing to live a simpler life. Acknowledging this doesn't weaken you. It humanizes you. Perhaps the biggest mistake modern spirituality makes is turning deep processes into quick labels. When that happens, people stop looking within and begin seeking external validation. But true awakening doesn't need an audience. It happens in silence, in the hard choices, in the boundaries you learn to respect, and in the illusions you must let die. This content is not an invitation for you to detach from the world, to feel superior, or to mistrust everything and everyone. On the contrary, It's an invitation to integrate, to live with more presence, more discernment, and less fantasy. To understand that spirituality doesn't take you away from real life. It teaches you how to live better within it. If you feel out of place, tired of empty speeches, bothered by exaggerations, and still can't give up the search for something real, maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're simply going through spiritual maturation. And that process, though uncomfortable, is necessary. There's no manual for this path. Each chosen one crosses it in their own way. What does exist is inner honesty. It's stopping the act of pretending that everything makes sense when it doesn't. It's accepting loneliness without becoming bitter. It's keeping your heart open without letting yourself be invaded. It's finding balance between sensitivity and boundaries. Before I close, I want to invite you to take part in this conversation. Share in the comments below what this reflection stirred in you. Have you ever questioned this topic? Have you ever felt confused, out of place, or tired of superficial spirituality? Your experience might help others who are going through the same process. This space isn't about ready-made answers. It's about genuine exchange. When you comment, you're not exposing yourself for no reason. You're creating connection. And sometimes, just knowing we're not alone is already a huge step on the path. Thank you for being here, for listening with attention, and for holding this level of reflection. Awareness grows when it is shared with responsibility.